Hi there, Richard the Dick Coughlin, 616. In this video I'm going to be looking at a paper, a study if you will, that was conducted by an organisation in America called the Family Research Centre. I don't know about you, but every time I hear the words family in any American organisation, a sudden chill goes down my spine as if I'm about to hear the most mindless, bigoted bile you've ever heard spouting out of a human being's mouth. And I'm afraid I was not mistaken in this case. This study was called The Top 10 Myths About Homosexuality. Interestingly, none of them include the myth that all gay men have AIDS, fuck children, have impeccable dress sense, and burst into tears every time they see the final sequence for Dirty Dancing. Ironically, as I'm about to show you, the research done to debunk these myths of homosexuality is in itself mythical. But then saying that, when you're a Christian organisation and your entire religion is based on principally ancient mythology, I suppose we can't hold it against them for making one or two or several thousand mistakes, can we? As I said, this study was written by some shit-stained pubic louse goes by the name of Peter Sprigg. In order to give you some idea about Peter Sprigg, I would like to read from you the introduction to the top 10 myths about homosexuality. The homosexual movement is built on not facts or research, but on mythology. Unfortunately, these myths have become widely accepted in society, particularly in schools, university and media, because every time I turn on the news, all I see is gay this, gay that, gay the other. It is our hope, and it is a hope, that by understanding what these key myths are, and then reading a brief summary of the evidence, carefully selected, against them, the reader will be empowered to challenge these myths when he or she counters them, and I hope to do the same when the stupid bastard counters them with this. If you're interested in finding out where Peter Sprigg stands on the issue of homosexuality in various cases, let me show you some clips of video I found. This is a clip of Peter Sprigg being interviewed by Chris Matthews on MSNBC when he was asked about gays joining the military.
They want to serve their country. They're patriotic. What should they do?
Well, they should serve it in some civilian capacity and not join the military. Because
Why
the
not?
military's because the presence of homosexuals in the military is incompatible with good order, morale, discipline, and unit cohesion.
Well,
that's exactly what Congress found in 1993, and that's what the law states.
Well, I suppose it's nice to know that at least he's against Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Sadly, though, it appears it's for the wrong reasons. Of course, they could lie. And it seems that Mr. Sprigg is not really happy with gay people joining the military, going away and fighting, and possibly even dying in order to protect the freedoms that America holds dear, such as the freedoms to sit on a cable news show and spout your mindless bigotry about the blood that has been shed on your behalf. Good one, Pete. However, there is a slight sort of inconsistency here. Who'd have thunk it? Where Peter Sprigg, in another interview, said this.
I would much prefer to export homosexuals from the United States than to import them into the United States, because we believe that homosexuality is destructive to society.
So let me get this straight, Peter. You think America should be exporting gays from your country, and yet you're against them joining an institution like the military, which would do exactly that. And not only that, wherever it takes them, they might die in the process, so they're definitely not coming back. Way to be consistent there, fella. So, we can establish this, that Peter Sprigg is a complete spacky shitmuncher. But nevertheless, we must continue forward and look at his paper objectively and fairly. As always, I have left links to the paper and all the other information and sources for my research in the smegma bar, which can be found below. Shall we continue? Myth number 1. People are born gay. Generally, the argument that counters this is the argument that there are environmental issues that actually lead to people being homosexual. In the world currently, there are about 500 species that we know of that engage in homosexual activity. Now, if of course you're going to argue this and assume that this to be true, you have to come up with a reason or an explanation to what environmental factors actually led in to a giraffe, an elephant, a sparrow, a dolphin, or even a fucking gerbil turning gay. And of course this goes back to the whole original argument of this movement that of course gay is a choice. However, there is another major inconsistency. That's 2! Because in this clip from the MSNBC interview I showed you earlier, Peter Sprigg said this.
Peter, do you think people choose to be gay?
People do not choose to have same-sex attractions, but they do choose to engage in homosexual conduct.
So it's not a choice now. Well, what is it then, Peter? And even if it is a choice, so what? Almost everything about every human being, take for example me, was not present in them when they were born, but is present now. I wasn't born a smoker. I wasn't born a liberal. I wasn't born with a penchant for cowboy boots, skinny jeans and eating Pringles. These are all choices, or are they? Some of them are even damaging to society in some way or another. Why aren't you trying to ban them? Myth number 2. Sexuality cannot change. This one is technically true, however, it is very much misrepresented by the Family Research Centre and Peter Sprigg. The Family Research Centre uses findings from a 2001 study that was spearheaded by a guy called Dr. Robert Spitzer. Spitzer was one of the people who in 1973 was responsible for having homosexuality removed from the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic Medical and Statistics Journal as a mental disorder. However, the 2001 study that he conducted showed that in certain cases, certain highly motivated homosexuals can in fact change their sexuality to some degree. Now, of course, the FRC and the group Focus on the Family were all over this like shit on Velcro. However, there is one thing they forgot to tell you. In fact, I'll let Dr. Robert Spitzer tell you it himself.
It's understandable that Focus on the Family would be delighted with the results of my study, because the study did indicate that there was evidence that some gays can change not only their sexual identity, but their sexual orientation, fantasy, arousal. So of course they were delighted with that study. What they failed to mention, and it's not, I guess, a big surprise, is that in the discussion I noted that it was so hard for me to find 200 subjects to participate in the study that I have to conclude that although change is possible and does occur, it's probably quite rare. And of course they don't want to mention that.
Myth number 3. Trying to change someone's sexuality is considered unethical. The source for most, in fact all of the information regarding this myth comes from a group called NARTH. That's the National Association for Research and Therapy in Homosexuality. Let me explain some things about people who are members of NARTH, because NARTH members have a habit of behaving in a way that's rather controversial and bizarre. In fact, it's safe to say they're a few cards short of a full deck, presumably because they've shoved most of the other cards up another guy's arse. Gerald Schoenwolf, PhD, once wrote a paper featured on the NARTH website that justified slavery. Joseph Biger, MD, wrote a paper for the NARTH website that encouraged children to mock and ridicule gender-variant children. Joseph Nicolosi, the co-founder of NARTH, tries to encourage his male clients to be more masculine by drinking Gatorade and referring to him as dude. NARTH members also partake in a practice known as touch therapy. This is where a client will sit on a therapist's lap and stroke him and caress him to make him feel better. Santa says you've been a very naughty boy. And don't even get me started on this fucktard.
Because George Reekers is completely heterosexual. George Reekers is completely heterosexual. George Reekers is completely heterosexual. Glory, hallelujah.
So don't talk to me about unethical behaviour.
Because George Reekers is completely heterosexual. George Reekers is completely heterosexual. George Reekers is completely heterosexual. Glory, hallelujah.